Hello, my name's Rob and welcome to Swift Slots. Now, a little under 18 months ago, I was given 3 cars by one of our good subscribers, Darren. And one of those 3 cars was this, the Scalextric C130 TR7 from the late 70s. Now, I absolutely love this car, but up till that date, I'd never actually got one of my own cars into my collection. So I was really pleased that Darren actually gave me this really nice example. And I did review those 3 cars on the channel about 18 months ago. There's a little link just there. So after doing that run, I really wanted to get my teeth stuck into a TR7, but there was no huge motivation to do it quickly until all you guys started lighting up the comments down below. And it was a regular theme for the next few months. All I saw in the comments was, Rob, when are you going to do a TR7? I thought, that's a bit of a note to me. Maybe I ought to get myself a few more TR7s and take this further. Now, I absolutely didn't want to change Darren's car. That's staying exactly as it is. Yeah, the tyres are a little bit old, but it's immaculate other than that, and it runs beautifully, and I really like it. So I couldn't work on this particular car. So I had to go shopping on eBay for some more. So I ended up buying this car as a complete car, along with this body at the same time. So the car was complete, the body was just the body. So I decided to start cleaning up this red one, and I decided the tampos were a little bit thin, and I started polishing up with some car polishing compound to try and get the colours a bit brighter, and I started going through the black because the black does seem to be a little bit thinner than the yellow. I thought, but you know what, I'll just take all the tampos off and we'll turn it into a nice road car, put a bit of lining in all the panels just to sort of give it a bit of definition, and then we'll go through the whole car and clean it up, make it absolutely immaculate, brand new tyres, new wire, service the motor throughout, put a brand new set of tyres on it, and I'll have a really nice car to work from. Of course, once I'd done that, I didn't want to work on that one either. So I had to go shopping for some more bodies so that I could get this project underway. So with that, I ended up getting this very nice white one. Now, apparently these are quite rare, so not the easiest to get, but I did only buy the body shell. It didn't come with any other parts. So that was fine, I can work with that. And then I got this one here as well. Now this is going to be the subject of this video. No, it's not. This red one, sorry, is going to be the subject, because this yellow one apparently is the partner to this car, and apparently they're not quite as common as the red one. So we'll keep this one as it is. So as you can see, I've now got a collection of TR7s. So what I intend to do is I intend to run this absolutely perfectly running car around Crow Valley, and we'll take a time. Now we all know that the TR7 is very questionable. It's been the thing all the way since it was made. It has bizarre tyres on it, and it has a very weird handling characteristic where basically it doesn't want to go around a corner. As one of my subscribers said, Neil, these take the corners like a suggestion rather than an actual bend, which is completely true. So let's get to Crow Valley, let's run my standard car, and then I'll get you on my table and I'll show you all the parts that I've bought and made to try and turn these bodies into really good TR7s. Okay, so for those that don't know, let's just very briefly familiarise ourselves with what we're dealing with here. Now this is obviously 1970s Scalextric C130 TR7 with very questionable handling and some very strange tyres. Now I don't quite understand what Scalextric was smoking when they made this car, but it's a very, very odd choice for this particular model. But nevertheless, that's what we had to deal with, and that's what's plaguing our problems all the way through these years. So let me just pop the body off. You have to be very careful with these, because this is the problem with this car, or some of the problems rather. These little lugs, they have a habit of snapping off, and I've also been told that the chassis can snap here as well, but I haven't seen that myself. So here's the inside of mine, all very standard, nothing special whatsoever. And obviously we have the body here, and it's just a very, very simple clip-in interior, which doesn't want to clip out at the moment, which is unusual because these things usually fall apart really easy. There you go. So we've got a simple interior with a simple removable head, and also a very, very easy to remove glass, just like that. So there we are. So that is the body that we're dealing with, and this is the interior, and this is the chassis. I'm sure we're all familiar with it, but now we know where we're starting from, we can now move forward. So in this particular video, I wanted to address all of the handling problems that this car has got. I want to address some of the weight issues that the body's got, and I also wanted to address the fact that the chassis snap on the back here. And I wanted lots of different options and lots of different variables to get these cars back up on the track working properly and repair your old broken chassis. So for that, I needed a perfectly good chassis that I could work with, but was actually broken as well. So it needs to be good but broken. And Mac came to the rescue, another one of our subscribers, and he gave me this chassis, which is indeed already broken on this corner. So that's what I wanted, a broken chassis, so that I don't have to wreck one of my good chassis just to do this video. I've also got this body here that we're going to be working on. Now obviously my original red one was one of these to start with, so that doesn't matter that we're going to be using this one. We're going to repaint this entirely, going to make it look nicer so we can address the looks, and then we're going to sort out the chassis with various upgrades and also some upgrade chassis that I've made. So talking of those parts, let me quickly show you all those parts that I've got. Okay, starting at the rear of the car, we've got a Pendle Slot Racing AC4 20,000 RPM S-Can motor. We have an inline 5.5mm 19 tooth pinion for the motor. We have a slotted inline 28 tooth crown gear in brass. We have a pair of hardened Slotting Plus axles. And we have a pair of Pendle Slot Racing ABO1 double flanged brass bearings. And it should come as no surprise that I've got a Pendle Slot Racing conveniently packed Slotting Plus guide. Now, one of the problems that the TR7 has got is its wheels. Now I'm going to try and address that in this video, and I'm going to start by using these Pendle Slot Racing 14-inch alloy wheels. And on those 14-inch wheels, we're going to put these Pendle Slot Racing 22mm diameter by 9mm wide treaded tyres. Now these are not the stickiest tyres in the world. They're very good, but they're not the stickiest. Now these tyres are going to go on our road going car, so we get a really nice handling car that looks good and handles well, but it won't be the ultimate build. For the ultimate build, I've got more tyres in this build to show you. And in our 14-inch wheels, we're going to put these classic mini light inserts, again from Pendle Slot Racing, as a 3D resin print. Now I did say we're going to do a performance version of this car in this build, and for that car I'm going to put on these Staff's 15x8 by 10mm 6-spoked air rim alloy wheels, front and rear. And on those wheels, I'm going to put these G25 tyres. Now, I would have used the Pendle Slot Racing F15 tyres, but at the time of this video, they weren't available. And to be honest with you, the G25s are extremely good tyres anyway, so I think we'll be absolutely fine with those. Now, you may have noticed that that particular pack of tyres only had 2 in. That's because the other 2 are on these wheels here. And the reason why they're on these wheels is I want to show you the first of my own products for this build. Now, it's been explained to me how air wheels are supposed to work, and for the life of me, I don't really understand them. Every time I've run air wheels, in rally at the very least, all I ever get is 2 wear points on the outside edges of the tyres, and I always get a completely untouching tyre in the middle of the tread, and I can't get them to work for what I use. So what I've created are these little 3D printed inserts, and they simply slip over the wheel, just like that. They fill in the gap, and then you can simply put on your tyre and it will take up the gap where the air section of the tyre is, and you can see there's absolutely no flat spot in the top of that tyre at all. And I've used things like this in the past. I've actually put car body filler in there, but that works really well, but these are much more convenient. So the next products I want to show you address some of the problems that we find on the original Scalextric chassis. Now, we know about the rear lugs snapping off, but these rear bearings sit far too low in the chassis, meaning the body sits far too high, giving the car a very, very high centre of gravity. Now, fortunately for us, Scalextric also mounted the motor extremely high, which also doesn't help the original handling of the car, but helps us a great deal when we want to move those bearings vertically to lower the car down, because it means that by lowering the car down and lifting the axle up further in the chassis, it actually brings the axle spot on in line with where the motor sits as standard, as an absolute happy coincidence. So I've got something to address that. Also, the wibbly wobbly front axle, I've got something to sort that out as well. So those things to sort out are in these bags. Now, this first kit is the kit to address the rear end mounting of the body. Now, as we know, those lugs have a habit of snapping off. Now, if you don't want your car to have lug mounted body, you can actually use this insert here, which is designed to simply slide into the back of the chassis, a body just like that, and locate on those little pins and glue in, and that will actually give you a rear body post. Now, you'll actually notice that there are two sections to this. You've got a thick part and a thin part. If you're just using this part to screw into the original chassis, you can leave it exactly as it is. However, there is a reason why that step shoulder is there, which I will show you later on. Now, with regards the bearings, this is a little part that I've made to address that problem also, and it simply clips into the chassis just like that. And what that does is it actually gives you a new place to mount your bearings up higher in the chassis. And you've got 3 mounting points here, here and here, and as you can see, this particular mount simply pushes into your chassis and becomes part of the chassis without any problems at all, and it brings that back axle perfectly in line with the motor. And then as part of this kit, I give you the 3 screws here to mount on your rear mount here, and also there's a slightly larger screw so that you can screw in your body post if you want that. And then obviously you need to use an S-CAN motor for this conversion, so I've got a little S-CAN converter there, which is obviously goes into the back of that motor mount like that, and then you can put an S-CAN motor into this car. You can't use a long can because of these lugs. And then moving up to the front of the car, I've developed this little block here and this brass tube. Now that brass tube slides into that block all the way through, and you can glue it in. And then once you've got that block, the tube screwed into the block or glued into the block, that block simply bonds into the chassis just like that, and that will actually stiffen up the front axle and lower the car right the way down. And then you can cut the length of this axle to suit the wheels that you've used. It comes as a long enough length for you to fit all sorts of wheels on, so you don't need to use spacers, and your axle will run very neatly in that brass tube. Now, if you don't want to use the bolt-on rear axle, the bolt-on rear body, sorry, I also sell exactly the same pack, but in that pack I've got a replacement clip-in part so that you can clip in the original in the original way, and it simply clips in just like that. And all you do to mount this particular one here is you simply glue it into your chassis like that. Now obviously you will need to clearance what's left of your rear posts. I haven't done that on this car yet, but I will do it later on in the video. And then you simply glue this piece straight into the back of the chassis, and it's designed so it registers in the bottom of the chassis against that shoulder, and that will give you back the original pin style rear quarter mount. But obviously there's a slight advantage to mine because they are nice and flexible, so they'll actually give you a little bit of compliance, so they won't snap off quite as easily as the original ones do. Now, as we all know, vintage Scalextric cars have a bit of a problem with centre of gravity, and most of that problem is in the glass and the interior. So to address that problem, I've made these vacuum forms, one glass, one interior. You will need the original head from the original car, but that's no big deal. They're very cheap, very plentiful, and they're not very heavy. So these two pieces here add about 2.5 grams of weight against the 10.5 grams found on the original car. So that's a good saving of at least 8 grams. Okay, so the meat of this video. these are the chassis that I've designed to replace your original Scalextric chassis. Now there's a lot going on here, so let me just put this car to one side and we'll go through them one by one. So this is the original chassis, what I'm calling the original chassis. And on this particular chassis, I've widened these bearing points so that you can fit the original wheels into the chassis, and they won't need any space as they'll just clip in. Also, what we've got are the rear mounts all mounted in there ready to go as a direct replacement for the original. But we've also got a pocket on the rear of the car so that you can put your rear body mount fixing on, and that is what I was referring to back earlier on. You just cut off the excess post down to the wide part, and that will line up perfectly on the back of your car, and then you can screw it in simply using that screw point there. Now these chassis are designed to take a long cam motor. They lower the motor all the way down in the chassis, so therefore the bearings are lifted up higher to give you a natural lower point. Also, you'll find the front end is completely adjustable, and they come with four grub screws so that you can pop your axle in and get it to exactly the height you want. They're also set up to take any sort of guide that you want to. Now obviously my preference is slotting plus, so I'm a little bit biased towards that, but that hole is less than 3.5mm in diameter, so you can simply drill it out to whatever size you want. And to get that front guide the way you want it, I've also included this selection of inserts. Now that large insert there is designed to be glued to the bottom of the chassis as your starting point, because it's 2.5mm thick, and I think all of these cars are going to want at least that. And then you've got 4 washers there. You've got a 0.5, a 1, a 1.5 and a 2, so that you can fine tune after you've glued the main piece in. You can obviously glue that in and then sand it down, or not even fit that at all if you want to slam the chassis all the way down. And as you can see, it's got a standard tongue fitting in the front, which to be honest with you, I don't have a problem with. That seems to work quite well. And you've obviously got the lugs on the back of the car. Now there is a bit of a trick to fitting these chassis on. So all you do is you simply slide the tongue into the front of the car like that, and then put in one lug into the back of the quarter like that, so you end up like that. Pull the rear quarter slightly just so that the lug just fits in the body, and it clips into place like that. And then you've got an absolutely perfectly fitting chassis that fits beautifully all the way around the car, and I'm extremely pleased with the way that this has come out. Now I didn't think that I would personally be able to make such a chassis like this, but I have done, and I'm very, very pleased with it. So I make 3 different styles of this chassis, as you can see here. This is what I call the original chassis, and it's designated on there by OG. So that's to fit your original car. So this takes all the original running gear. It won't take the original motor, but it will take the original front wheels and front axle, rear wheels, rear bearings, and the gear, wheels and tires. It will take it all in this chassis. So if you want to get the look of your standard car, then you can use this chassis. You will have to sort something out for the guide. My preference is slotting plus, and you will have to fit a long cam motor into this original chassis. So the next chassis that we've got is what I'm calling the standard chassis. Now it's fundamentally exactly the same as the original chassis, apart from you'll notice that we've got a tube in the front, which is where you put your axle. Also, these bearing spacers here and on the back are all spaced wider to give the bearings a much better chance of supporting the car. Now obviously your axle on the front is completely supported in a tube, and you can cut that tube down to whatever size you want so it can control the end float, and you nip those scrub screws up very slightly just to pinch that axle, not to crush it, and that will actually stop the slop in that front axle, the side to side movement. So the tube controls the end float, the grub screws control the end float of the whole unit, and the adjustment screws there adjust the height on the front of the axle. So the middle is exactly the same. We've got the same setup going on completely, but the back end is marginally different. We've got wider spaced rear bearings to give you a much better bearing support on the back of the car. And as you can see, we've got the same mounting on the rear if you want to screw mount it. We've got exactly the same tongues on the side to go into the body if you want that also. And you can see the bottom of this car is pretty much identical. Small amount of changing on the back end there, but not much. And it all fits the original car exactly, or the body exactly as the standard one or the original chassis does. So that is your standard chassis to take all standard parts that you can buy from Pendle Slot Racing now, not the original parts. And the third chassis that I do is what I'm calling the lightweight version. Now underneath that tube it says LW for lightweight. Now all this chassis is the bottom has been recessed out 1mm deeper than the other cars. You might be able to see that there, and that is purely so that you can fit lead down as low as possible and lower the center of gravity of your weight by 1mm. Like I say, it is fundamentally the same as the other ones, only with a thinner floor. Now obviously with the thinner floor it's a little bit less stiff, so it's got a little bit more flex to it, if flex is your thing. And you may want to fit the rear body post as well, and like a racing type car, so you can use the rear body post and then you can have a little bit of slack in the back end, and that little bit of flex in the chassis will help with a bit of a racing car as well. Also makes it 1.7 grams lighter. If you don't want to add weight, you just want a full-on lightweight car, this is the car or the chassis for you. I've also scalloped out a little bit of holes at the front here, so it makes it a little bit lighter all over. So that is the lightweight version, primarily for racing cars, to get the lead down by 1mm and improve performance. So the motors that I'll be using in my 3D printed TR7 chassis will be something similar to these long cam motors, both available from Pendle Slot Racing. The silver one is the SRP 25K long can, but you can get them in 20,000 as well as a 30,000. And there's also a Scale Auto 18,000 motor, which I think I'll be using in my white TR7. Now if you spotted those guide spacers on that chassis, you thought, oh, I could do with a set of those. I also do those separately as well as a little sprue of one part. So I thought I'd address this other part that I've made in this part of the video, because I'm not going to address it again, I'm just going to do it. Now I'm not actually selling these officially, but if you want one, just ask me on my website and I can supply it to you for free if you buy a chassis from me. Now this Pendle Slot Racing 14-inch alloy wheel fits this 22mm by 9mm treaded tyre. It fits it reasonably well, but it doesn't fit it 100% perfect. The tyre is a little bit baggy on that wheel. It's not the greatest fit, so I can turn that there. Now for a casual driving around, that will be absolutely fine, but I want to be able to pull this tyre down a little bit tighter to this wheel than this tyre will allow. So that's where this particular part comes in. So all you do is you put a bit of epoxy on the wheel and then put the tyre on and simply slide the wheel and tyre combination into this little holder here. And what that does is it snugs the tyre down to the wheel to make sure that the tyre is nicely glued tight and round inside the alloy wheel. And I will be using this jig later on in the build when I make my standard road going version of the TR7. And if your TR7 is going to take on the more classic feel and you want a fresh set of wheels and tyres, the tyres are also available from Pendle Slot Racing, and they are PCS-321413T, and the wheels, which come in various colours, are PC-PWP02, and the last letter defines what colour wheel you actually choose. So this is Future Rob come back to show you a couple of parts that I had to make towards the end of this build, and I thought they're better off placed in this part of the video. So here we've got some tall rear view mirrors or door mirrors. I had to make these for the TR7 because the ones I had in my existing range weren't quite right. So we got this sprue ready for sale on the website if you need these tall style door mirrors. And next up, Pendle Slot Racing did actually once make me a full set of these spacers, and they are to space your wheel insert out from the back of your wheel, because it's sometimes difficult to get the correct depth of your wheel spacer, and these are really helpful, and they just pop into the wheel and glue in, and they'll set the distance of your insert from the back of the wheel to the front of the insert, and they're very handy. Pendle Slot Racing aren't selling these anymore, and they've given me absolute allowance to sell them on my website. So as you can see, I've made a whole range of them, 2.5 to 3mm on this particular sprue. Got 2.5, 2.7 and 3mm, so there's enough for one car per depth. And I also do one that goes from 3.25 all the way to 3.7. As you can see, it's branded and they come in silver as a 3D print. Now at the end of this video, I decided I wanted something quite special to display these cars, so I decided to 3D print these particular bases, and as you can see, they have positions for three separate positions for your car to be placed in, so you can have two 1/32 scale cars on the outside, or 1/124th on the middle, and as you can see it's a racetrack, and we got a very slight cant, and they come 3D printed in white, red and black. Now this particular one has got a little bit of staining on it because I printed the black as the base colour and then put the white on top. Future ones I will put the white down first and then put the black on top, and that will make the white go nice and white and the black will go probably slightly more grey. And that was the racetrack version, and I've now got a street version as well, complete with storm guards. So you can exactly the same deal. You can put a car in here in 132 and also in 24th scale. One on the other side, you can have them going right hand and left hand drive, and there's also a slot in the middle just to put one in the middle if you fancy being a bit of a boy racer and want to drive in the middle of the road. And as you can see, we got a little bit of relief there in the gutters. The white line is raised, and this is all 3D printed in the correct colours as you see them here. So I'm going to be using these plates at the end of the video to showcase the two cars that I should be building in this video, and both of these plates are now available on the website to buy if you want a nice display base. Okay, so now we've got this huge pile of parts for these two vintage TR7s. I think it's about time we turn our attentions to the workbench. We try and update this car into a very nice road going version, this particular car into a really handy track racer. Okay, so let's start with the screw-in post kit. So the first thing to do with this post kit is take the post itself and rub the back of the post down so that it's reasonably rough and got a decent gluing surface. Then take your body and do exactly the same in the back of the body itself under the rear trunk or the rear boot. Just like that. Then take some super glue, put a couple of small dots of super glue along the bottom of the post, and then simply glue the post into the back of the body like that. So the next job in fitting your screw-on post to your original chassis is to remove the broken lugs from your original chassis, and you can simply do that by chopping them off with a pair of side cutters. Just like that. Then with a toothpick, take some paint on the end of a toothpick and apply a little bit of paint to the bottom of your post, and then put the whole chassis into the body and transfer that paint mark to the underside of your chassis like this, and then remove the chassis and you'll have a perfect imprint of where the post is, and simply drill a hole into your chassis and then you can screw the chassis to the body. Now I'm not going to be drilling a hole in this particular chassis because I want to move on and use this chassis for the next kit, which is the clip-in kit. So to fit the clip-in kit, simply take the clip-in part, sand the back of the clip exactly the same as you did for the post kit, and then also sand the bottom of the chassis as well. And taking note of the fact that this has got a taper on the bottom of it, just like that, you want to orientate the clip so the taper is facing down, so the clips end up being in the same location as they were originally. If you get it wrong and you put it in backwards, then you can see that the clip is extremely wrong. So once you've established that, you can apply a small amount of super glue to the chassis, just like that, and then clip your clip-in section into the chassis up against the rear bulkhead nice and tight, and it will locate perfectly all by itself. And once you've glued in your rear clip, it should look exactly like that. Now because there's a little bit of springing in these clips, there's a bit of a trick to get this chassis back onto the body. So all you do is you simply put the chassis back into the body as normal and clip in one rear quarter, and then pull the body over the clip and hold it just like that, and then with a screwdriver you can simply clip it into the body, and that sends the whole chassis completely home as you would expect. And the way to get it off is you simply put a screwdriver onto the underside of the rear quarter and then give it a bit of a twist, and the body comes straight off again without any issues. So next up is to fit the bearing holder, and that simply clips into the chassis like that. It holds itself into place. Now there is a bit of a trick to this. Get a 1.5mm drill and go into the existing holes that were printed in the mount, and then chase those all the way through to the underside of the chassis, like that, and then repeat that for the other 2 holes. And then once you've done all those 3 holes there, change your bit for a 2mm bit and then chase through the existing holes with the 2mm bit, and that will actually give you the clearance you need for the screw when you come to fit the bearing holder in place. Like that. So now we've got our 3 holes drilled to 2mm a piece. We can now go and glue the bearing holder in place. And once your bearing holder is all glued into place with all 3 holes chased through, you can simply use the 3 screws that came with the kit to screw the bearing holder into place on the chassis. And once you've done all those procedures, you should end up with a really nice bearing mount all glued and screwed into place and looking very neat on the underside of the chassis. And then it's just a simple case of clipping your bearings into the bearing mount, and that is a simple case of adding your bearing to your shaft, putting it into the mount and clipping it in place just like that, and do the same for the other side. So now the bearings are all fitted, you're free to move ahead and fit the entire rear drivetrain into the chassis. So with the motor and gear and axle all installed into the chassis, that concludes fitting the rear end hardware. Now we can move over to gluing the tyres onto the wheels. So while those tyres are drying, we'll move forward and we'll glue in this front axle block. And for that, all you do is you get a small piece of sandpaper and scratch up the bottom of that block so it's reasonably well scratched. Also go into the chassis itself and just do your best to scratch up a little bit of the inside of the chassis as well. And for that, I'm just using a fiberglass pen, but you could use a knife or something along those lines just to get a bit of surface degradation on the inside of that hole. Then on the inside of where the axle goes, you'll notice that there are 2 little pinch points on either side, and they are just to limit the front axle. Well, we don't want those, so simply cut those off with a scalpel. Just like that. And then get your block and push it as tight down into that front as you can possibly get, and make sure that the hole where the axle will eventually go is nice and lined up with the actual slot where the front axle used to be. You want to get that nice and tight and push down there. You can also get your axle tube and push it through. That also acts as a nice guide as well. So you want to get everything really nice and tight and pushed down so that it all looks like that. Once you've got to that stage, you could put a bit of super glue on a little bit of paper like I've got here, or a little bit of plastic. Put it onto a cocktail stick, and then you can simply drop it into the bottom of that hole to glue that block in place. And it's better to use a cocktail stick because you can get a good control over the glue. And just make sure you get plenty of glue in there, and then simply let it dry for about half an hour, and then we can move on to the next stage. So while that front axle block is gluing into the chassis, we can turn our attentions to sizing the axle tube and the axles themselves. And for that, we simply fit the axle to the wheel with a little bit of poke on the inside of the wheel. Then you could slide the second wheel onto the axle, give it a gentle nip, and then offer it into the car itself and just see where you land. And if you're not happy with that size, you can just move it along and offer it back into the car, and then you'll get an exact position within the body. Once you're happy that your wheels are spaced correctly, you can simply measure between the wheels just like this, and that will give you the size of your tube. And then you can put your vernier on the end of the axle and measure into the wheel, and then that will give you the amount of axle to trim off front and rear for your main axle. So now we know our sizes for the axle and the tube, let's go and cut them. So now you've got your front tube all sized. Go around the middle of the tube itself with a little bit of sandpaper and just scuff up the surface. Then place the tube into the chassis just like that. Now it's worth spending a little bit of time getting that tube completely centered into the chassis. Now I've already done this on mine and I know what my size is. So I'm putting my caliper on the very edge of the block and I'm sliding the tube up to the other jaw. Then you can go ahead and do it on the other side and you can just double check to make sure that it's 100% even. And once you're happy that it's even, you know that your caliper is set correctly and you can lock it off so that the caliper can't move. Once you're happy that you've got your measurement and you can reliably refer back to it, you can slide your axle out from the chassis and apply a little bit of glue along it just there. And then in one quick swoop, slide the tube in and get it exactly right on both sides. Now I understand that using super glue on that front axle tube is a little bit hairy, so if you don't trust yourself to get it right first time, you could always use slow setting epoxy, give yourself all the time in the world. So now that front tube is glued in, we can now go ahead and assemble all the wheels onto the chassis. So now we have the wheels all on the chassis, we can now think about putting the front guide on, and for that I recommend you just snip off those two lugs that are on the chassis to get them out of the way, because we don't really need them at this point. Now you could, if you wanted to, just straight up fit a Slotting Plus guide onto the front of the car with the appropriate shims and then shim the guide to where you want to be, and that will work perfectly well. But as you can see, there is a small amount of wobble there, so if you actually own one of my reaming tools, then you could go ahead and pop the tube in and ream it out. If you don't, you could get away with just leaving it exactly as it is. It's not that bad. So let's fit this guide and get this chassis built. So that is the clip-in kit, fully fitted and fully working in the original Scalextric chassis. And as you can see, the rear pod is very neat. The screws are very discreet. The rear clip fits in very neatly. The front axle is fitting exactly as it should. The wheels are very free to turn and the guide is also very free to move. And if we put the whole car on the setup plate and then move the back wheels, the front wheels are free to turn, but they're also very free to turn with the tips of my fingers. So when you fit the body onto the actual chassis, now you will see that the wheel arches fit beautifully in the wheels. As you can see, the wheels have got a really nice, or the tyres have got a very nice amount of tuck just up inside the wheel arches, and it all looks exactly as it should. Now I will put a quick picture here now of this car and the standard height car back to back, just to show you how much lower this car actually sits. So with the clip-in kit and the screw-in kit on the original 70s Scalextric chassis now fully explained, we can now move on to making my custom 3D printed chassis for the TR7. Now, as I explained in the introduction to this video, these chassis are all pretty much exactly the same, but with a few tweaks. Most of the tweaks come on this original chassis, that being the front bearings are wider, front and rear, and also I've adjusted the height of the bearings within the chassis. Other than that, this original chassis is pretty much the same as the other chassis here, but this particular one will take all the original hardware or running gear so that you can turn this chassis into something that looks exactly the same as the original 70s chassis. But we will come back to this chassis at the end. I will just simply put it together and show you. So then we move on to the last two, that being what I'm calling the standard chassis and the lightweight chassis, which I'm going to be using in this racing car. So again, with this standard chassis, it's exactly the same as the lightweight chassis now, with the bearings all sucked in. There's the front axle tube there as well, and it's exactly the same as this lightweight. So I'm not going to do too much with this. I'm not actually even going to build it. I'm just going to say that everything I'm going to do to this lightweight chassis, you can do exactly the same to this standard chassis with absolutely no difference. The only thing is the floor is thicker, so the chassis is a little bit stiffer. Okay, so now we can move forward with the second chassis build of this video. Now don't worry, I'm not going to bore you silly with another full chassis build, because quite frankly, this chassis is so simple, I don't feel the need to show you all over again. However, there are a couple of things I'd like to show you. That is obviously the guide spacers. That's a little bit different. I'll show you how to glue those into the front later on in this particular build. The other thing I'd like to show you is this chassis actually has the rear mounts all in place. They don't have to stay there. You can route those off if you want to, which I will be doing to this chassis. And then you can simply use the rear body mount there, so you can have a little bit of extra body float for the performance cars, which is what I'll be doing here. And as I showed you earlier on in the video, I've already glued the post in, and that is why I have this thick and thin part of the rear mount. So on this particular 3D printed chassis, you chop off the thin part and you just leave the wider part of the post on this particular variant, and that will allow you to screw the body on and have a little bit of body rock as well, and you can adjust that to how you want it. Now, as you can see, I've retained the tongue mount that was found on the original chassis, because I don't have a problem with the way that that actually works. And as you can see, that slides into the body extremely nicely and fits really, really well. Now you can actually get a little bit of body flow on there if you relieve the slot, either by removing material from the body with a file or sanding the tongue itself, and then you can induce a little bit of float in this chassis, which I will be doing on my performance car. And then all you simply do is clip in the rear quarter like that, spread the body, and then snap it into place. So now we've done that, let's crack on and let's build my white racing car. And there we have the finished lightweight 3D printed chassis, and as you can see, it goes together extremely easily. There's no surprises, it's all very conventional. As you saw, I took away the rear lugs because I favoured the rear body fixing, and also the guide all goes in perfectly well. The front wheels spin extremely freely, and the back end is all very conventional. There is space here in the back end for 2 screws if you want to use them and screw the motor into the rear. You'll probably need to use a ball-ended Allen key to get in there because it's a little bit tight, but you don't really need the screws anyway. So as I said, I've opted for the screw-in rear end, and I do supply a threaded screw. It's not the best for body float, but it'll get the job done. But also I have relieved all around the edge of the body as well. There it does seem to be a little bit of variance between these bodies. The ones that I've got all fit ever so slightly different, so you will need to go around the edge of the bodies and just tickle them in a little bit if you want that ultimate performance. I've just rounded off the edge of these sills, or rocker panels if you like. I've just nicked a little bit of the inside mold line of all the arches just to ease that. I've just smoothed off the front of this just to ease that as well, taking away a little bit of the flash on the corners. And then when you've done all that, you end up with a body that sits on the car extremely well. And if I just pop this screw in the back and give it a few turns, you can see that you end up with a little bit of body float if you want it, a little bit of vertical as well. Obviously the vertical will be improved with a shouldered screw. With regards to the standard chassis, as I said, nothing going on with the standard chassis that isn't already included on the lightweight chassis. I just haven't built this one because there's nothing much to see here other than what I've already showed you. And also I've built up, or at least put in, the standard parts in the OG chassis, or the original chassis as I'm calling it. Again, the back end just drops in, takes the big fat original tyres, and you have got a little bit of adjustment on the front axle. And I've also clipped in a standard Scalextric guide. Just here, it just clips in. Again, it's exactly the same with the block on the bottom. And I have, again, trimmed down the top of the post, so you end up with a really nice fitting original guide. And when you fit the body on, oh, I have actually trimmed down these 6 posts by about 2mm on the inside of the panel of the interior there, because otherwise they'll interfere a little bit. But once that goes into the front end there, obviously the rear quarter goes in, and then just clip him in, and there you go. Absolutely fine. Everything all clears, no problems whatsoever. So there is the original chassis. I haven't put a motor in this one because I'm not going to power this one up. There's no real point in it. We've already seen this chassis on the other cars now. So it's just to show you that you can actually fit all your big fat tyres onto this original chassis. All it needs is just to pop a motor in, exactly the same as a lightweight model I've just made, and you're away. So that basically concludes the building of the chassis. So one other thing I would like to say, this particular car, all up as it sits right now without an interior, which will add about 1.5 grams, is coming in at 92 grams. So that's a little bit on the higher side. I normally run my rally cars at 95, so that only gives us a 2.5 gram margin. However, this body itself, unlightened, weighs 19.5 grams, which is quite heavy for a body. So if you were to thin this body down, get it down to approximately 10 grams of weight, you could take that 10 grams of saved weight and then stick it straight onto the chassis, and then you'll still have a 92 gram car, or 93 or 4 gram car, but now you'd actually have the extra 10 grams right down low in the bottom of the chassis. That body lightening is beyond the scope of this video, but it is an option if you want a really high performing car, so that's just it's worthy of note. So now we've done all these cars now, I think it's probably time we get on and we paint that red car into a nice road going livery. So there you are, guys. That has been my comprehensive video on the Scalextric TR7. Now I know that a lot of you have been waiting patiently for this video, and I hope I've delivered. Now I have obviously done a lot of things in this video. I've covered a lot of ground, got all sorts of options and all sorts of brand new products, and I did that because I really wanted to get this video right. I really wanted to cover all of the bases with this car, from fixing an old chassis to fitting out your car with a brand new chassis, and then having that chassis with various options, and also options for the glass and the interior and even the wing mirrors and other little bits and bobs all the way through this video. So I've really tried to make this a really good video for you guys, so that you can really watch it and get a really good comprehensive video and a comprehensive conclusion to all the fixes to this particular car. And I hope that you've enjoyed it, and I hope that it's covered all the questions that you may have had about this car, and I hope I haven't disappointed anybody. So as you saw from the video, the running of the red car was as we expected. This car is very good. To be honest, some of the problems with the running of the red car is the fact that the pendulum slot tyres are so grippy, it almost wants to tip the car over. They could almost do with a bit less grip, believe it or not. But that said, it still runs incredibly well. The motor doesn't have a lot of power bottom end, so you've really got to give it some welly as it's coming out the bends, and it takes a little while to kick in, and when it does, it comes in like a freight train, so it's a little bit tricky to drive. You've got to kind of balance that sort of back leg picking up kind of thing around the corners, just with the sort of, and just the right amount of power, just at the right time, just early enough so that when it kicks in, it doesn't sort of send it off the track. But it did a sort of, what was it, a 68 second run, which is, to be honest, not too bad. I know it sounds really slow considering a sub 50 second is really fast, but it's a very old car. It's not that bad to drive, and say with the pendulum slot tyres giving you a bit of grip, a nicely freshed up motor, it runs okay. I think we can be happy with that one. The green one, now okay, a 57. I was hoping for a little bit more, but again, the problem with this car is, again, it's got really grippy pendulum slot tyres, and the grip itself isn't the problem, it's the fact that they're quite tall. So they're tall tyres, and they're very, very grippy, so when you go around the corner you get a lot of tyre flex. So as the tyre rolls, it becomes it grips and it flexes, and then it straightens itself out, and it does that lots and lots of times. So it tends to sort of judder the car as it goes around the corner, as it sort of grips, folds, unloads, grips, folds, and that's why she struggles around the really tight bends on Crow Valley. But there's only a couple of bends I really had to work with. That's the bend after the bridge. You go over the bridge and you go around that really tight bend. She really didn't like that particular bend. I couldn't really flick it round most of the time to get a really smooth run through that bend. But other than that, all the other bends she went really, really well around. And if you put this car on any other normal track with those tyres, she'd be an absolute dream. And don't forget, this car is running on the old chassis with my little fix kit in this car, so it is still basically the old car, albeit with just a lightweight interior and glass to get some of that weight out, and then just my fix kit in the chassis along with pendulum slot racing's upgrade parts throughout the rest of it. And if you run it on an ordinary Scalextric track or Carrera track, it would run absolutely beautiful, like a dream. So if you got it on the big open track, you'd be really happy with this one. Now, my custom chassised version, what an animal. I swear to you, this car is just about one of my best cars that I've got in my entire collection, and that's not, I'm not being hyperbolic, it's genuine. Watch this video until the very end and you will see my genuine reaction to the very first full lap I did with this car. And I didn't think it was that quick. I knew it was very good, but I didn't think, that's a genuine reaction. Now, I've only got one other car in my collection that I think could rival this, and that is my S4. My, what was it, not Scale Auto, I forget. It's the Delta S4. It's an SRC. That's a blinding car. But the thing is, when you get to the edge of its performance, it'll fall over. It's quite a tall car, and it's amazing, right up until the point that it's not. And then it'll just go. This car is everything that SRC S4 is, only it doesn't want to tip. And that is before I've taken any weight out the body. Remember in the video I said if you took 10 grams out the body and put that on the chassis to get the weight even lower, it would be, in theory, awesome. I can, having now run this car, I can tell you if you did that, it would be epic. Absolutely epic. I cannot tell you how good this car is. The tyres are so predictable. The chassis is so planted. You can get on the power so early. It brakes so hard. It's an absolute joy to run. Now, I don't know if it's because of the chassis that I designed or because of just the layout of the body. I don't know what it is, but it's absolutely got that something. This car is a rocket ship. I absolutely love it. And that time, was it 46.8? I think it was. Whatever time it was, blinding time. There's a lot more in this car. I reckon I could pull probably another second out of this car quite comfortably. If I took about 8 grams at the body, stuck that on the chassis, had a bit more time to practice with it, it would be an absolute flying machine, and it would actually rival my Formula 1 cars. And with the old Scalextric Brabham that I did, and the other car, my mind's going blank as I'm talking to you, but I got the BRM. The BRM Formula 1 car that I did a long time ago, that's my fastest car on the track, and it beat my NSR Porsche 911. And then back from that now, I've got the Brabham, which has beaten the Porsche. The Porsche has now been sold, so my 2 Formula 1 cars are the fastest cars I've got, and this car, it could easily be the 3rd fastest after the 2 Formula 1s, and with a bit more practice, I reckon this would beat that Scalextric Brabham as well. It's a phenomenal car. Have I said it's a phenomenal car? I think I have. Anyway, I hope that you've enjoyed this content, and I hope that I've answered all your questions with the TR7. I hope I've covered all the bases, and I hope that you're really happy, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. And if you have enjoyed this video, maybe you'll subscribe, and if you could hit the little bell button, that would be awesome. So until the next time, thank you very much. 46.8. Me.